In this week's Sidra of Vaychi, Yaakov Avinu blesses his grandchildren Ephraim and Manasseh. It's a very beautiful and emotional scene that the Torah describes to us. Yosef hears that his father is not well, tenderly ushers in his two children, and he places them so that Yaakov, when he blesses them with his hands on their heads, his right hand will be on the head of the older child Manasseh, his left hand on the head of the younger child Ephraim, and yet Yaakov switches his hands. He does it that he's blessing the younger child with his right hand, which somehow is the primary blessing. And then the Torah tells us that he blessed them. There's the famous blessing of Hamalach HaGoyal Oti Mikorah, the angel that saved me, that redeemed me from all trouble, should bless the children. He gives them a beautiful bracha. And then the Torah tells us that Yosef sees how he's moved his hands, and this distresses Yosef very greatly. So Yosef reaches out, taking his father's hands to switch them back to the proper heads. And he says to his father, "Father, this is not the way it's supposed to be." Now, if we take a look at this piece of the Torah, there are three things that bothered me about it. The first one is the ordering over here. It seems that Yosef is closing the barn door after the proverbial horse has bolted. First you have Yaakov blessing the children with his hands and heads, and then it tells us that Yosef wants him to move the hands, but the blessing's already been given. The second question is the chutzpah of Yosef reaching out and moving his father's hands around. Excuse me, this is your father. In fact, the Midrash, and I don't think this is the point the Midrash is making, but I'm going to use it in my question. The Midrash puts the words in Yaakov's mouth. He says, "Son, these hands which fought an angel, you think they don't know what they're doing? Yeah, what is he going around just fiddling with his father's hands? Quite disrespectful." Number three is he first moves his hands and then he speaks to him about it. "No, father, this one's the older, this one's the younger. Surely you should first talk to him about it and then try to move his hands." So those are three things that bothered me when I took a look at this section of the Torah. And I looked into some of the commentaries and I emerged, I think, with answers to all of these three. As far as the first one of why is he only correcting him afterwards, the Rashbam says, in fact, he corrected him before. The Torah is not telling us the story in the exact order in which it happened. The Torah describes it as the children come in, Yaakov switches his hands, gives them the blessing, and then Yosef wants to move them back. But actually the Rashbam says that's not how it happened. It happened in a more logical order. That the children come in, Yaakov moves his hands, Yosef then immediately objects, Yaakov justifies his placement of the hands, and then he blesses the children. So why is it put in the order in which it is? The Rashbam does not explain, but I would suggest that what's happening here is the Torah is telling us, in a sense, two different stories. The first is the story of the blessing. It's important to know the fact that he blessed the children and what he said to the blessing. The second is the story of the dynamic between Yaakov and Yosef and the way in which this blessing was handled. That's also a good and important thing, and that's also something that the Torah wants to tell us about. But first we'll talk about the blessing, and then we'll speak about the dynamics around the blessing. I think that's the literary style that's at work over here. Secondly, why is he going and lifting up his hands? So again, this is my suggestion, but I think it's fair to say that perhaps Yosef panicked. You know, what he has over here is his whole life was dominated by the fact that his father showed him favoritism over the other brothers and the tremendous resentment that was fostered as a result of that. And here he sees with his own children, he's taking efforts to make sure that the firstborn's treated like the firstborn, that the second's treated like the second. And here his father's coming, seemingly replaying the same events that will set up this lifetime of competition between the two brothers. And when Yosef sees that, he immediately reacts. He wants to do something about it, perhaps even without proper consideration. That would be my suggestion. Although what I did find in the commentaries, one of them said, it's not that he reached out and moved his father's hands. He was prepared to move his father's hands. Another one is that the Torah uses the word litmoch, to support the hands. And if someone pointed out to me, the father who is Yaakov is old and almost blind, that Yosef is not coming manipulatively or aggressively to shove his hands around, but rather coming helpfully and supportively to lift up his hands, to help him. He's doing Yaakov a favor. It's helping the old person across the road, right? That's what he's doing by lifting up his hand. So coming back to the idea, number one is that what the order going on over here is actually a more logical order, not the way the Torah presents it, because it wants to split up these two parts of the story. The second one is he's not going and shoving his father's hands around. He's doing it helpfully. But I think the reason he acts before even speaking is because of his surprise and distress at the way in which this might have panned out. Fortunately, as we know, Yaakov was right. He understood the nature of these two children. These are two children who existed without any jealousy or competition between them. And really, really a very beautiful relationship. But I think it's so important that when we read the text, we study it closely, we ask those questions. Please God, we should always see them being resolved. Have a wonderful Shabbat.